want to do that one.
Don, my one grandson who plays hockey year round is now playing lacrosse for the 8th grade at Donnell. And he said, the coach says you're a natural. Hi, hey, it's 4:01 or 4:02, actually. And want to welcome everybody to the Council of the Whole. We're going to discuss the capital improvement plans. And I'm going to turn this over to Jeff Wobser, and he's going to take it from here. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. President. We had originally had this planned as just an appropriations committee meeting and figured the more we thought about it, it'd be best just to have everybody come in. We'll let Jeremy do his presentation. That way anybody can ask questions about the entire plan. We have the first tranche of money is already had its first reading. That's 2024-33. As I added this up, it's about $1.3 million. That's about right. About 1.3 million that's on our agenda already. So this is just an opportunity for everybody to ask questions, and we welcome Andrew Rosser here for our first official meeting. And I know the mayor had something that you would like to say.
Yeah, well, just to kick us off, appreciate everybody taking the time to come and learn a little bit more about the 2024 capital plan. That's what we'll be going through today. The books that you have in front of you, Jeremy's put together, those are the project sheets, description sheets. And then the blue tab goes into the 2024 actual spreadsheet. What we will do is once this is approved with any modifications for the conversation, we'll then get you the full budget book with the 10-year plan put together like we did last year, so that you have that just to look at. But as has been historical, last year we started doing the 10-year capital plan, so that's what we kind of started putting together. As we work as a department heads, we say, if you know something's going to be 10, 15 years out, let's start putting that on the list so we can keep that in mind. We continue to allocate 20% of our income tax revenue directly to capital improvements. Historically, we had gone as high as 25%. That's something that we can always talk about, but right now we're still at the 20%. We have been paying cash for these projects. I think one thing that we may start having a conversation this year on future years is, does it make sense with the current interest rate climate to be able to look at issuing debt to cover some of the capital improvements, while then also utilizing, keeping more cash on hand rather than paying cash? Because if you look at interest rates right now, we may be able to do a bond issuance at 3.5%, and we have some of our investments receiving a return at interest rate of over 5%. So that makes sense. That's something that we need to take a look at. That's not something that we want to get into today. But don't be surprised if in the next couple of months we start having those kind of bigger picture conversations. Because in this book, you'll see there's not too many like crazy big items, but I know over the last year or so, even the last couple of years, we've mentioned a couple of potential significant projects that we've been keeping on the horizons with some facilities. It could be things like the pool, it could be things like public works building, it could be general improvements that we need to make, doing things like that. So just wanted to just put that on your radar. That is something that we'll have conversations on, but not planning to do that today. Today, we'll really just talk through 2024. The overall format, I'll hand it over to Jeremy here in a minute. We have a number of kind of spreadsheets or graphs that we'll walk through like we did last year. And then our plan is just to go department by department, highlight a couple of items, and then you guys can ask questions. We don't plan to go line by line. We don't need to talk about every single police car, different things like that. Any questions before we get started then on that?
Real quick, if I could add to your comments briefly for the members who weren't here at the appropriations meeting regarding Andrew. Andrew's role is to be our municipal advisor. He's hired, he's under contract through my office. What a municipal advisor does for us that you haven't been accustomed to, because it's been a few years since we've had one, is to really be an advisor and a resource who is a fiduciary to the city as a whole. So as some of these other conversations begin, you folks in my office, we have a resource as well as the mayor of a firm and an individual who will understand the city, understand where we're at, and help guide us so that we don't make I guess, decisions that could hurt us in the long run, ideally. So that's a super move forward for us. We're back to where we were when I came in about 10, 12 years ago. And the firm is a high quality firm. And I'm really eager and excited that you as a council have another resource to ask questions of as these proposals come to you. So you have an independent person, independent of an elected official's opinion, to take a look at and get perspective on.
Very good. All right, Jeremy?
All right, so, you know, like the mayor was saying, these graphs are always kind of nice to give kind of a quick snapshot of what the capital plan is looking like right now. So as you can see with the appropriations request that we have right now, majority of our work, almost 50% of it is going towards infrastructure. So that's going to include utilities, roadways, bridges, anything like that, or the general public on that. So you can see a lot of that is going towards it. The restricted operations, that takes in account of sewer, storm, and water operations. So that I put their, I don't have to, but I put their operating budget numbers within there because of how it comes out of the sewer fund or storm fund, water fund, and all that kind of stuff. So that way I know I kind of have those numbers built into the capital. It's not saying I'm going to be changing them or anything like that. You guys have already discussed that, but you know, when you see the operations, we have already seen those numbers. I just have it in for the capital. But you can see, like I said, a large portion of our work is towards infrastructure for the city. So since that is such a large portion, I wanted to show a little bit more snapshot of where this is going. So you can see utility improvements is roughly in the $9.5 million range. Public infrastructure, which is going to be our large portion, which is our roadways, which is our street resurfacing, any kind of that type of work. Airport, that is all going in there. So that's in the $12 million, roughly $12 million. And recreational development, that will be our multi-use paths, parks and stuff like that, upgrades that we have. We're about 1.6. So going kind of diving in a little bit more, just looking at our overall funds, you know, it's always nice to see, you know, that yellow portion be a large portion of what we are putting towards our city. As we're going through the plan, and you'll see over the next couple of years, there is a large portion of that is coming from grant funds. If that's not OPWC, ODOT, CDBG, FAA, they play a huge portion into our airport. Between ODOT Aviation and FAA, they're paying 95% of our projects. So, you know, when we have and we'll talk about here in a little bit, when we have a runway rehab, that's a $6 million project, they're covering over $5 million of that. So between ODOT and FAA. So that's a huge portion that, you know, kind of helps us along. So that way we're not allocating city funds towards the airport where we can allocate them to other projects that are needed across the city. So give you a quick highlight of this. You know, it's not out of the norm. You're going to see a lot of this within the capital plan that is going to include 23 projects that are carryovers. So there's a lot of items, like the mayor was saying, we're not going to go through there because there's a lot of items you've already seen, but they were carried over from 23 into 24 just because we didn't have the resources to complete them. We didn't, you know, have the material or something like that that was leading over to the next year. But it's not out of the norm that between the whole city, across the whole city, not just my department, I'm talking sewer department, water department, all that, that we're either planning, purchasing, in construction, managing between 126 projects and or equipment across there. So there's a broad spectrum of that. And to give you a little bit breakdown of that, you can see that 84 of those projects are geared towards that infrastructure towards the city. 17 are for the facility upgrade, and then 25 of them are equipment or vehicle upgrades. So that will include our tasers and stuff that you'll be seeing later. We don't have to read through all this, but you guys, you know, you'll be getting a copy of this. But just to give a quick rundown, so that way we didn't have to try to keep going through and looking at that. This is what you're seeing right here is pretty much each department and how much they are requesting for the 24 fiscal year.
And we really just wanted to put this together because when we put the slides out, then it's a snapshot for the public.
What's where it says Mayor Christina?
That's grants.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry, I
so
don't
yeah,
know how to,
what's
I don't know
on-
how to move that.
Yeah, so your last column there, all the way to the right, that is grant funding.
Yeah, I don't know how to get that to, it's on the Zoom room, so I can't make it disappear. We are live streaming and I've checked that it's all displayed.
Gotcha.
So that was our capital funds. This is just a snapshot of our debt service. As you see, there's no sewer on that. We are debt free on sewer right now, but I did throw in the sewer operations and water operations like I discussed earlier. But capital, we have seen that we have marched that out for the next couple of years on that, working with with the auditor's office, ensuring that we have correct numbers on that. But water department, a large portion of that is going to be rolling off here in the next couple of years. I believe it's a little bit over 200,000. So, pretty soon water is going to be sitting in a decent situation as well on that.
Can I insert a comment there on that slide for the benefit of council when 2026 sneaks up? Had some preliminary conversations with Councilman Wolfser. We'll want to look at, there is an ability for us to pay that debt off early rather than wait till 2033. And based on the calculations we did 2 years ago, it was going to save us something $400,000. And I don't know what that number would be today in real time money, but it's something we want to have on our radar and talk about.
So
The water debt.
The capital debt.
The whole, the capital.
Yeah, that's from, it was a big refunding we did up on the Cube, the Fiveplex and some other things. And some of it is not tax exempt, so we're paying some higher interest rates on it.
So if that decision is made, we'll reflect that. You won't probably see this, but when you guys make that decision, if it's made, then we'll reflect that on the next couple of years. And then finally, here's kind of our enterprise department fund. So this is our water, sewer, and stormwater that is looking at that. I broke down water just because they have quite a few different departments through there, but that is their capital request that is going through there. And then,
Do you want to just highlight these as we go through?
yeah, I can kind of highlight these, but I just wanted to give a quick, as I'm going through looking at it, these are kind of the bigger numbers that are coming up through that. But one of the big things with what I wanted to show with this and to kind of put it all on one piece of paper is you can see a lot of our large projects that we are doing through there that we are able to obtain grant funds to accomplish a lot of these projects. So I just wanted to kind of throw that as on one sheet so you can see, how successful we can be using these grant funds to get projects completed. All right, so now we'll jump to the actual spreadsheet and we'll kind of go through there. So, I'll hit on some large items as we're going through there, but if you guys feel, if you want to stop anywhere and we can kind of talk about it, feel free to stop me. The project description sheets that you guys have, like I said, you will be seeing it again, but if there's any more in-depth questions on like a project, I try to mark those out of what we're seeing so we can always look at that. But I wanted you guys to have that sooner than later so that way you can be reading it too. But that's kind of giving you a rundown of what's in front of you right now, but we will have this once it's approved, we will have a full book on it. Computer service, there's really nothing out of the norm on that. One of our bigger projects that we have been doing in the past couple of years is the municipal door locks, or the door locks, period, security door locks. Last year it was, you can see it was remote offices. This year it's going to be focusing on the municipal building. So we're working through that right now. And then, kind of as a theme that we have heard in the past couple of years is, storage room for trying to maximize our spaces that we have now. So last year, I know my office, we did a rebuild or kind of a remodel to maximize our space. That's what computer service is looking into because time we get more servers and all that kind of stuff, their room is filling up pretty quick. So we have some plans for that, but that's kind of some of their big ticket items for that. Going down into the police department, one of the fortunate things that we had is we actually used ARPA funds last year. We appropriated funds for the 24 police vehicles. So that's why you see all those police vehicles on that left side there. There's no money for that because it's already been appropriated for as part of the ARPA funds last year. So they've actually been rolling on that and getting those purchased as we speak. And then the next big item on there, which, it is a public safety that we have been working with extensively on between our police department, our traffic and signal department, is that siren replacement. They are starting to get to their useful life where the technology is not repairable that much anymore. So we have been working with a vendor on that to try to come up with some pricing. So that one that I have right there for $259,000, that will be covering 8 sirens. And once we get those ones that we know are problems, then we'll have to start evaluating and seeing, okay, how are we going to cover this for next year?
How many total?
So, can I jump in?
Yeah.
So we have 16 that actually cover our city, and we actually had them, the vendor come in and actually do an audible assessment because they are extremely old. I think the most recent was purchased and placed in the early 90s, so that puts it in perspective. But with that, the new technology, maybe the audibility, we might not need 16. So they actually came in and did that analysis, and the recommendation, of course, is to keep with the 16. And I was like, after I heard that, I'm like, yeah, of course I do. But regardless, they have the data that proves the distance and travel of sound and so forth. So
And that was your test on Thursday, that's when you did the test last.
yeah, unfortunately, yes. Yes. So with that, though, we've identified 8 that are priority to get replaced first, and we're working with them when it comes to the communication with the signals and so forth, and pole replacement and whatnot. So as Jeremy pointed out, we're going to focus on the 8 this year, and then we'll prioritize 8 next year. And or if we don't have to do 8 and 8, we can piecemeal them as we can work with their life expectancies.
Rob, what's your lead time on that? Once you pull the trigger?
The goal is if this gets approved, that we're going to have it done in 2024, these 8.
So it could be done.
It could be done in 2024, yes.
Yeah, and when we talked with them, that was kind of one of our questions because we were hoping to get it during this storm cycle, if you want to say. But it wasn't plausible, but we could still get them completed in the 24 next year.
One thing I will note, just because it is both fun and something that is, we will be replacing Shadow. He has retired or will be soon
They will be
retiring.
retiring this year.
So we will be getting a new canine. We are looking, if you've been paying attention at the state level, there's been some discussions on funding for canines for communities because of the marijuana law. Some of the canines actually have to be retired. So we already have that planned, and we're hoping that we may be able to take advantage of some of those programs.
Mayor, I want to apologize. I didn't put his retirement. in.
I was gonna just say the same thing.
And that's-
Shadow's retirement accounted for.
A box of dog biscuits.
Well, you know, these are the fun things we were talking about. We're like, okay, so now we need to have a fun competition around naming the new canine. So those are the fun things.
Ooh,
10, 15.
at least 10.
Yeah,
He's getting up there.
yeah, yeah.
Like you said, the marijuana is that the new ones have to be
Correct.
Yeah.
So when they open a car door, they don't want them smelling marijuana.
Yeah,
Doesn't make
in
any
essence.
sense.
Well, it's not necessarily
I mean,
illegal.
not
So if they
Buzz
sense,
driving is buzz driving.
if they sense it though, well, you're not, the science is all still being figured out. But in short, if they indicate that there are drugs in the vehicle and they search a vehicle and then somebody would use their defense that, well, they only signaled because of the marijuana and that's legal, therefore it was an illegal search.
And if they find something else in that search, it's
Yeah.
inadmissible in court,
Wow.
allegedly at this point.
Yeah.
If they find something outside of marijuana with marijuana.
Yeah.
So a lot going on right now with this.
Jeremy, any state or comments on the camera systems in patrol cars or
So
timing and with body cams and our existing systems?
So the body cams are up and running, as you know, 65 officers have those in place and they're working very well, working through the back office of things, but so far have not experienced any issues with it. Actually, they are in the process of planning out the rollout of dash cams right now with VPNs in the cars and technology that the cars need and whatnot. So, but the rollout will happen actually once this goes through. By June, July, we'll have the cars up and running with dash cams.
And so then
If they,
they feed into the same camera infrastructure of the body cam.
correct, they will activate together. So you'll have multiple views of the situation. You have the stationary vehicle as well as any officer's dash cam that's on the same incident, that you can have multiple angles and you'll have the stationary in the vehicle. There's different triggers. I'm not familiar with all of them, but activation of sirens, lights, etc. If you activate the camera, if you were on a stop, if you activate your dash cam, your body cam, the dash cam would then automatically be activated as well if it was not already. Some of the other things, when we talk about the TASER upgrade from TASER Generation 2 to 10, that actually is part of Axon. Axon was actually a TASER company first before it became a dash cam, body cam vendor. And with gun holsters as well as TASER holsters for activation of a TASER, the body cams would activate as well. So there's a lot of collaboration, if you will, or connectivity with the different software that I've never had to activate or make a decision about pulling a gun in self-defense or in protecting someone. The last thing I can even think of calmly is thinking I have to touch something to activate it. So that's where these redundancies in the systems are protecting officers, and we have that data. So Axon's a great company. It covers a lot of different things that we've implemented. And we're not changing the vendor for the TASERs. It's actually next generation technology. So it just worked out that Axon has body cam, dash cam, as well as TASER.
So does the car camera systems include license plate readers?
I believe that is one of the software, you can add that function in the software, and I believe that is part of it, yes.
I also thought the license plate readers had cameras facing fronts and backs or different directions or whatever. I don't know if
There's
that's part of our.
different versions of that, like you have the rear-facing devices on the vehicles and whatnot, so I can get more information about that, but the license plate readers was part of this functionality.
Someday we need to tell some success stories around that and how that helps the courts, and we need to tell that story.
I
Well,
just-
today,
Yeah, well, no, I just asked the chief that actually
we need to
yesterday.
get that story.
Yeah, because one of the things I asked him is to try to keep some information on how frequently our officers are not having to go to grand jury anymore because they're able just to provide the video. So we are starting to collect that.
Some of the recalls of incidents that people have when they call, when we provide them the camera footage, it's interesting the different
I'm sure.
version that you see versus what they recall. So it creates that third version of things. It's interesting.
Rob, on the,
Sure.
the TASER replacement, have we started to look at all of the new stuff that's kind of the burn systems with the tear gas deployment? Guns, BYRNA, they're TASER replacements essentially, non-lethal, much more effective than tasers are.
Yeah, it's like the beanbag guns.
But we have less lethal options, but tear gas is not one that I'm prepared to talk about.
Just something to
Okay.
think about. I've just seen it advertised and have heard that there's a lot of police departments that are using that as a replacement when they have to upgrade.
All right, yeah, so our next one will be pretty much the fire. The biggest one on there, which I know has already been through appropriation committee, talking about that, but is the new Quint apparatus on that. So if you look up at the top where it says funds transferred in, I have 1.5 million on that. That is what I am setting aside that's coming from the general fund into the capital plan to cover that cost. That's working with appropriations committee and the auditor's office on what is our best route for financing that. But I just wanted to point that out. So if you kind of put two and two together, that's what that 1.5 at the top is covering on that. But really on the fire department side, we just have some minor facility upgrades pretty much at our fire stations that we will be replacing. The Strict Center, no requested funds on that. Like I said, that's a carryover project, but they will be finishing pouring that concrete next week. So we'll be pretty much wrapping that up here in the next week or two. But everything went through on the burn building, stuff like that. So it's in operation.
What is the new Quint apparatus?
Essentially a fire truck. It's a type of fire truck.
Really engineer wise, want to continue expanding on our GIS system. We have pretty much all our utilities in there up to date, but with having 400 lines of water lines that were shown as duplicates, we're still finding a lot of work that is being done. But you know, as we discussed before, I think this is a great program that we need to utilize across our whole city. So we're going to continue expanding on that across the whole thing to try to utilize this as much as possible, and everyone can use this on the city side as part of their daily process.
Just shout out questions if you have questions.
Yeah.
Well, I would just say in regards to the GIS updates that we're doing, there have been several instances with the Shade Tree Commission where we couldn't get oops out there in time, but they were able to tell me right where in your office, right where the utilities were, so we didn't have to bother with it. It's an important tool.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, to give a quick story, that's where we found the importance is fire department was out on a call once and they wanted to know where catch basins were because there was snow, debris, it was dark, where catch basins were, where hydrants were. They were able to, I gave the chief my username, he signed in and he was able to geolocate as they were out there to find those things. So a lot of information that we can have on there that, you know, like I said, anyone across the city can use.
We're looking at hiring a manager for that or something. Like that.
So right now, we have a consultant that's working on it, because what I want to make sure is if we do hire someone in for that, it may be next year or the year after, but I want to make sure the system we have is fully functional. So that way we're not handing off a project that's 75% done and we're trying to get that new person caught up. So with the consultant that we have right now, they understand what our wants and needs are, and you know, we're kind of in a rhythm right now where we keep working on that. But eventually, yeah, I would like to get to that point.
Jeremy, is it worth a call to the community foundation to see if they have any targeted elements to help with the ADA transition plan that maybe they had some donors that are sensitive to that community?
That was all, we used ARPA funds to cover that for the ADA transition
I'm sure you're
plan.
gonna have some other things, but it's just.
I mean, what's going to happen from that is because we're in the process of already, they're going through evaluating that, but stuff will spur off of that. So that's where we could be using that as part of it, yes. Municipal building, you know, we've kind of talked about this for the past couple of years on upgrading our restrooms for ADA access and make sure we're up to code and all that kind of stuff. So that is kind of our first phase of going through there. Building those out. We recently have done a assessment across the whole city. So, you know, kind of like the ADA transition plan. This is where we're going to start implementing that type of stuff. And then as part of that too, or I guess a separate project on that will be LED replacement across the whole building. Our next phase will be pretty much we did the main hallways and stuff like that. Now it'll be pretty much the whole building, every light from there on out. So that will be a target project we'll be looking for this year.
There was nothing there from ARPA's side with, I know we talked about the vent systems and blue lights. There was nothing that we could have done with the LED upgrades.
The projects that would have qualified under ARPA money did not make sense if they weren't improvements that we felt were necessary. So we tried to on the ARPA funds, we tried to put them on things that we felt were necessary expenditures of anyways, or going to be public facing.
The executive time implementation that's on here is actually tied to their security door upgrade as well. We have to make sure the card technology is compatible with the executive time program that we're getting for everybody to check in. So we're working with computer services on that. But some of these are interrelated when it comes to higher tech stuff.
So is there maintenance to that, or is it just a one-time cost?
That's the one-time cost, and then yes, there'll be annual fees with that. All of the Tyler system, so that has annual fees for every department that we're running it out of. That would be true on the PD side. That's in charge of other stuff.
Income tax, there's no project for 2024, but everything is going well with the e-file system, which is up and operational, and our income tax department is hot and heavy in their season. So if you see any of them, please tell them thank you and good work, and drop off treats maybe if you have a chance. All right, rec function. I'm gonna scroll it there.
Yep. All right. So rec function. Really, the big project that we're having on there is the seating area for the whole cube complex. Expanding that out, especially with the what was the name? The Flake City Sluggers coming in. There are seating requirements with that. So you know, if we're going to be getting an influx of more people going to that park, one, we want to make sure it's safe, it's accessible, and we're not having any kind of drainage problems or seating problems. So that is kind of one of our big projects that we're looking out there right now is how to expand the seating. If anyone's been out there, you know, if there's kind of number 8, number 9, the small stone that's in between, they get all over. So we're looking at ways to get rid of those and have a safe passage for people through there. But that would be a, you know, big project that will actually pay off in the long run, I feel like. But going down to park maintenance, you can see there's quite a few park projects this year. Kitty Corral over there on Riverside, we are going to be relocating that basketball court out of the parking lot. So that way we can maximize our parking and actually we don't have to worry about any damage claims or anything like that because of where it's located. So that will be a new basketball court over in that area, and then also repaving the parking lot in that area. The Riverside Toy and Surface, you've seen some of that funds going through as part of the first appropriation. But that, you know, as you'll be seeing as you're
Toy and surface.
so a new playground with the kind of the soft pebble flex.
Okay.
It's called pebble flex material on there. It's the
We're
foolproof.
replacing the seating in front of the amphitheater.
Not as part of this year.
Yeah, so Dave Hans is going to be cleaning them up, and then we're talking to the park
Which is
district about improvements to that.
Okay. Thank
Yeah, it's on the list.
All right, thank you.
So the Riverside Toy Service is a new location by the amphitheater, or we're replacing the Riverside Park Kids area,
It was the Riverside Kids area.
closer to the pool entrance?
Yes, yeah. But you know, you can see those type of materials or apparatuses, playground toys, whatever you call it, not cheap and
How
stuff
about
anymore.
this, get back to the amphitheater, the stage expansion, there was this rickety wooden structure there, is that getting upgraded?
I think that was just what they just did.
They just did.
I thought that was last summer.
That looks pretty nice now. I've been out there this year.
Yeah.
Looks pretty good.
Does
I really can't tell it's not part of.
Is that right?
It was-
Okay. Thank you.
And yeah, and some of these items, you know, if they're not in capital, they could be as part of operational as maintenance and repair type thing. So we can check in a couple of those.
Yeah, that might be where Hans has the
That's what
benches,
it
because I think we had talked about that.
Yeah.
So I'll double check with
Or
let's see.
Finley Playground.
Yeah, Fort Finley. That's the next one on that. So, sorry, did you have something?
Go ahead.
So Fort Finley Playground, originally we were kind of thinking of the $750,000 to $800,000 range after we got into design, looking at everything through there. I think what we've had, and this went through a Parks and Rec meeting. But what we came out of that, I think is a well put together plan. Kind of meets a lot of the needs. It's still getting that Fort Finley feel with that. But what we're looking at that, we have a vendor that we're working with through Sourcewell, and now is actually working with our consultant too, where we can purchase the playground equipment directly from them and receive a discount as part of that, because I still want to have this as a community build type project. The last one was community build. I think that really puts a lot of heart and soul and, you know, people are putting into that. I want to continue with that. So that way we can cut down our costs, maximize this playground as much as possible, because really on the south end, this is kind of our gate to the south end, if you want to say with that. We are relocating it over to the east a little bit more. But overall, you know, this is going to be a pretty broad playground within that area. So if you guys want to see any kind of plans where we're at or anything like that, you know, I can talk through.
Are the plans done?
We don't have the full construction plans, but we had the concept of what they look like and all that kind of stuff. But the one nice thing about the vendor we're going with, we can have a lot of one-off pieces that are customized, but they're also repeatable. So if we have a problem with one, yeah, we can't go, you know, off the box, but we can go to that vendor and we can get it repeated. That was one of the big questions we had with that.
So we went from 750 to $1,415,000. Is that the
Yeah.
budget now? It's $1,400,000.
Yeah. So what we're looking at is restructuring. How can we restructure that parking lot? If you ever been down through there as well, it's just a straight strip. So between drainage, how we restructure the parking lot, how do we incorporate some kind of nature play areas in there to kind of be a timeless as well. You know, kind of make this along with all of our other parks, make this a destination too,
Would
where
they be upgrading the restrooms and everything? I mean, those.
not as part of this, but that's where, you know, I wanted to throw a little bit more budget in there where we have pricing for all those kind of things that if we can upgrade the restrooms as part of it. But, yeah, I mean, we have a whole master plan for it, but we gotta scale it down, make sure we can get at least the 4 done, but then keep building out that area.
So when you envision to build this summer then?
Meeting with it probably won't be the summer, it'll probably be this fall that we'll be doing it. The one thing that we gotta make sure we work around is the Balloon Fest and soccer and all that kind of stuff. So, talking with the vendor, if we ordered today, it would be probably August before we get the material. And then, but we could start on it after that.
And who will manage the project if it's gonna be if Jeff and I are gonna build it, who's gonna tell us what to do?
So the manager
Well,
will
we
go
actually
through.
have some qualifications
Yeah.
in either of you.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'll stay away and maybe we'll be okay.
So, it'll be managed through our office, but who we're purchasing it from, they will have an inspector on site. That's part of their kind of deal with it, is they'll have someone out there and they'll help with
Yeah,
construction.
yeah, and part of that last project, yeah, there were definitely 3 or 4 construction managers from
Yeah.
the vendor that was walking around telling us what to do.
Yeah.
What not to do, obviously.
They lay out the poles and everything. They do all the measurements. That way
Yeah.
they make sure all their parts.
To piggyback on what Jeremy just said, when we kind of looked at the initial plans and how to do what we wanted to do, because that area is such a zoo when it comes to Saturday mornings and soccer, and we wanted to reconfigure the parking and all of that and keep the Fort Finley feel. That's really where that budget increase came from.
Just a couple comments. So when we did this last time, there was quite a bit of funding by the public that, you know, we sold bricks, naming rights. Obviously, Fort Finley wasn't one of them. Got a lot of corporate money, some individual money. I don't remember the amount, but it was pretty substantial. And obviously, the labor cost was, a savings, just like it would be on this. But that, so just keep those things in mind.
Well, and we're planning to incorporate the old bricks.
Yeah.
into the
That was gonna be my question.
No, we're.
We're gonna have a
Because-
walkway, still dedicated.
We don't
to
wanna
those.
not,
No,
because of the original bricks that were there from the original.
Yeah,
Fort.
that was one of those that's got my name on it. I don't remember what I paid for it, but it
I was
wasn't
gonna
cheap.
say that.
Yeah.
Jeremy could send those drawings. I must have missed one. The last I knew we were doing more of a ground level type park. Did we get back to doing more
Yeah,
climbing
so-
stuff and?
Yeah, so it is.
And changing the look to actually a fort?
So the front will be a fort, but it's not gonna be a fully enclosed fort. So we're gonna have the 2 towers, if you wanna stay on the side, with a catwalk that's going in between the towers. Working with Human Nature, who is our consultant on that, they have a lot of background on, and they pretty much do parks and playgrounds, stuff like that. We kind of talked about that. Do we make this enclosed? Do we make it an open? We decided to make it more of an open because kids nowadays are wanting that open feel where they can run. It invites more age groups, so that it feels like it has to be only a certain age group playing within that. So we've talked about those, but we will still have, I can send you that, but we'll have the front, when you walk in, will be 2 towers with a catwalk across. And then we'll have different toys throughout the whole thing.
Something
And-
corners?
Yeah.
That they can still-
and I've heard,
Yeah.
and that was really the concern, the openness, because I've heard from a couple of mothers in my ward that they have panic attacks because there are so many nooks and crannies, they don't know where their kids go. But also, those nooks and crannies sometimes house some nefarious activities as well that we don't want in our parks. So,
One thing I will mention, the concept drawing that Jeremy will send out is simply that. It's the concept drawing. As he mentioned, it's got a lot of elements that are potential down the road. They are not the ones that we're necessarily
Right.
doing right now. It's the vision over a period of time for the park. So I would just qualify it with that.
Yeah, don't expect that. What I'm gonna show you when you see the whole concept, that amount's not gonna pay for the whole thing. Our main goal is get to Fort Finley. complete it, and then set ourselves up for the future. So our consultant understands that as well.
Want to take one step back on
Yep.
the Rawson Park tennis court.
Yes,
That will be lined and the fence will be put back up.
this year.
Will that also be lined for pickleball or just, it will be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Tennis and pickleball.
Yep, yep.
It's a good time at Rawson Park. I don't like
Yeah,
the two- I don't like the two groups like each other. Going back to your, to the park memory. But I knew this was working its way through Parks and Rec, but I was expecting to see this. But I think we need to have a much broader public conversation about this.
Yep.
And the sooner the better, especially when you talk about overall park layout. You are correct. This is the charm of the South. I mean, this obviously, and the things that I've seen from this should be shared. We should start that conversation. These versus just us passing out to city council a couple of diagrams and stuff.
Yes, so that's what I was good. So we actually just had a meeting a week and a half ago. They're getting us multiple views of this, and we're going out to the schools. We have a good relationship with Chamberlain, the high school, Millstream, all kind of those, all the way through Donnell. We've been in there working stuff, and we're going to get into schools and get feedback from the kids as well. Show them our concept, show them the different views, show them what the playground areas or the toys are going to look like for that to get, like what the mayor was saying, it's not set in stone. We have a pretty good cost, but we have some options that we can, well, instead of this toy, let's do this one. It's still going to stay with the theme. And that's what Human Nature is getting those right now. So that way we can take them to the schools and get some feedback from the kids.
Before construction starts, can we work with Marathon Center for, I'm going to try to do this without laughing. It's Marathon Center for Performing Arts for a screening of season 2, episode 6 of Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Kaboom. You know what happened?
Yes, I love it. We were just talking about Parks and Rec. Actually. That was one of my favorite meetings during COVID when we first had our first virtual Parks and Rec board meeting. I started the meeting by playing Parks and Rec theme song.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yes, one thing I will mention on park maintenance, not related to city parks. We frequently get questions from citizens or concerns with parks that are not actually city parks. And I know that there is some confusion on like with the pavilion at Riverside, that's the park district property, not the city, and some other things. So we are working with the park district right now to get very clear outline of who is what is whose responsibility, as well as some maps and different things about all the different parks and who's responsible for who. And then we are also talking about a good way to, on our website with like the report of problem, having, if you're reporting a problem related to a park, selecting the park so that then those can go directly to the park district as well. So they're just trying to get additional clarification on issues so that they're getting addressed in a more timely fashion.
The downtown park, is it falling under here or someplace
No,
else?
you'll be seeing it here.
It's at the bottom, it's at like the main kind of.
Capital improvements, recreational development. So you'll see it in a couple pages.
All right.
Do we have anything for expansion or upgrade, I guess, at the Riverside pickleball courts?
Not this year.
Not this year. No.
It'll be in our 10-year plan.
It's
You
been
can't
in this-
build them fast enough.
Yeah, it's we've talked about, but it's kind of where's the next location for them if it's in the same
So
area.
that was funny. I brought that up to the person in charge of whatever that league is and said, hey, we have space available. Would you be in it? And at that point in time, he said, no, we don't need any more. Now you're saying they're begging for as many as we can give them?
Yeah, so we've been
So-
looking and nothing is definitive at this point in time. One of the things we're looking at is relocating the softball field that is by the existing pickleball courts. We have some issues with that being the smaller field anyways. So we would potentially be able to relocate that to the Cooper Field area and then be able to utilize and improve the lighting so they would be lit fields, and then adding pickleball courts there. So we're still evaluating that, and then based off of cost estimates and timeframes, then we'll bring that back. But right now, that we don't have anything definitive enough to include here, but I would expect that you'll probably see it in 25 or 26.
Street department, really nothing definitive on that. The big purchase on that is a bucket truck. In the last year, you would have seen it in 26. The reason why we're putting it in 24 is a 2-year lead before we can get that. So we had to move that up just to make sure we can get that in 26.
And what year is the current bucket truck? What's the story?
I think it should be on your project sheet.
Yeah.
While you are looking at that, I mentioned it at the State of the City address. One of the things that we've been talking about as an administration is looking into fleet management. And we have a lot of different equipment, not necessarily vehicles. I would say our team's pretty good at, they really are utilizing their vehicles a lot. But, do we need
We
somebody
have it
back?
in our munis system.
I know we have that, but what we're looking is taking the data and then having somebody manage it so that we can say, hey, we can share a backhoe among departments. And so when that one dies, we're not replacing it. How can we, pretty much a scheduled asset as part of your project, rather than just each department kind of having their own that, gets used one day a week and could have been shared among other departments. So that's something that we're going to be working through. Ginger's showed me how to get the asset list, so I probably need to get a new one from her here soon. But that's something that we have a team member that's going to start kind of looking into that and start working with our department heads to track some of that data for a while to see what efficiencies we may be able to gain.
1998.
Okay.
We could give her a page number.
Oh, it's page 101, but I mean, when you see the whole thing, that number will make sense. When you see the whole book, that number will make sense.
So Jeremy, we feel, and that kind of goes to what the mayor was just talking about. We feel like we've got our rolling stock verified and under control, where we, without, anything major malfunctions, that we have a replacement plan in place for our major pieces. I'll just stop at that point because
Yeah, so and I kind of had this one up. We actually had our whole departments give what their current stat or what their current equipment is, the conditions on it, if there's a problem, what the condition is, and all that kind of stuff. So we can start expanding some of these lights out on that. So yeah, we do have a pretty good grasp of where we're at. So we're making sure, I came from the construction background. Anytime a piece of equipment is not moving, you're losing money on that. So I kind of had that mindset here. If we bought a skid loader and it hasn't moved for 3 weeks, why do we need that skid loader when we have, another one that's sitting at another plant or, somewhere for 3 weeks? So we're getting a good idea of what we have out there, what the problems are with it. If it is repairable, what needs repaired as part of that. So that way, we're not just replacing something because a hose went out on it type thing. I know that's kind of extreme, but we have a good background, and then, like the mayor was saying, that's kind of going to lead into when we do get a excavator or something like that, can we get a up in a class to a 308 from a 305 where multiple departments can be using it, because that's not a piece of equipment we're using every day where it's a specialized, but we're having something that we can complete the job in an emergency, something like that, and we're not just having 3 of them sit around.
The
But
other,
some,
I was just gonna add, the other thing is, we've been talking about the public works building, and that in the near future, we're gonna have to make some significant improvements there, if not complete overhaul. One of the things with that as well is that we are talking, again, evaluating whether we should do kind of a consolidated maintenance shop for our large equipment. So again, it would kind of be a consolidated shop. People, when they're scheduling their work, would then determine which equipment they need. Then we have somebody, and we, right now, we kind of, everybody has somebody on their team that's kind of a maintenance person. We want to keep those people around so that they can help. But do we need 3 different sets of lifts? Do we need so many sets of equipment? All those different things. So there might be some opportunity for efficiencies there as well.
so I think that's all good, but I think for me, when we use the word replacement, I get the impression we're selling stuff and getting rid of it because it's not worth having, it's falling apart, it's rusted, parts aren't working on it, but oftentimes we're shipping it to another department we're talking about trading things out. I guess I'd like a better understanding when we're doing that. I know the one part you're talking about was, do we have redundancy and don't need to replace and have that many of that same vehicle? But when we're moving vehicles around and saying this needs replaced, that's the reason I asked on that one, like, how old is it? What's wrong with it? Because if it's not going anywhere, I think we have to evaluate that too. How aggressive do we need to be on our vehicle replacement or our equipment replacement, I guess? And I'm not saying that we don't do it. I'm just saying, do we have that right balance right now, or could we improve that? And
So-
that's what I would be interested in.
I think the point was one that we talked about last council meeting, the Vector, because we're buying a Vector and then actually we're moving the one to another
Yeah.
department and then they're getting rid of it.
Yep.
I think it comes down to understanding the frequency of use, what they're using it on and when they're using it. And the department it's getting, the one that's getting the new one, the one that they're actually replacing doesn't meet the demand of what they have. However, it meets the demand of the department it's getting transferred to, and it's a much better piece of equipment than they have. So it's like repurposing. I see your point. Like, why are we moving this stuff, and why are we not? What's the replacement look like? And I think there's a lot of different variables for different scenarios.
How many years it would be able to
Well,
keep going?
And
I think
years,
there's just
years
a
are
lot
different
more
than
to
hours and
understand on
your
it.
Trade-in
miles.
value too, sometimes you get nothing for trade-in value, so
Right.
it's something that we can still use to replace a really old piece of equipment.
Yeah, we don't want
It's a
to
great
end up
point,
with
but there's a
that we
lot
don't
of
have
variables.
Something
It's
working,
like
but if we're
hand-me-downs.
upgrading to a better model,
That model that's getting actually
that's
put
what
in
I
that
need to
other
understand when
department
we're
is much
talking
better
about
than what they
how
have.
aggressive or not
And
we
it
are.
meets their needs.
Right.
Yeah, I think this just goes back into with our 10-year capital plan, just knowing that in there, you've got useful life for a dump truck, right? It's gonna be X. And if it goes longer, great, we just keep moving it down the road. I harken back to the meeting that we had where the axle fell off of one of the 2 dump trucks at the sewer plant. Well, now we've got problems because we need 2.
Right.
Yeah, that was not good. So just so that we eliminate those types of things, that was really kind of
And
basic.
we've
That
had a
goes to-
really, we've had a really
what
good
policy
maintenance
said.
department when we came on and
Yeah, but when the axle
13.
falls off.
True, yeah, no, but I mean, we had a lot of older vehicles that were maintained very well. I just remember when we all toured them, that's all. So I just think we need to have a little more detail.
Yep, and I think that those, project description sheets, that's one of the things we're trying to achieve there, is communicating the life, we're tracking the useful life, tracking the maintenance. We want to get better at fleet management so we can make sure we're efficient, but then there's always going to be opportunities for those hand-me-downs where it doesn't meet the needs of the sewer department because it doesn't hold sufficient suction, but it can be used for the street department to help with some small projects. And if there's a little bit of useful life, we're gonna squeeze it out of it before we put it on gut wheels and get scrap metal value.
They are non-marked vehicles. We've done a really good job over the years doing that from the police department, other departments getting transferred to the departments that really do need a vehicle, but the frequency of use, the mileage, the wear and tear is not as drastic. So we'll continue to absolutely evaluate and try to optimize our assets.
Traffic signal, I mean, we're continuing on with our Main Street, signal replacement. That's kind of, signal replacement's an ongoing battle, that we're doing every year. Those get beat up pretty well, especially with rust and all that kind of stuff. So those are nothing out of the norm on that. We've seen in the past couple of years going forward.
Is it, just so the second one down South Main at Hardin Street, it starts at 120, but then where's the $40,000 difference? That it comes over to 160? I just
It's
noticed
just
that.
a carryover.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
All right.
I'll just have to carry that over.
gotcha.
Good catch. So a lot of those, if you look on the right, I know we can't see it right now, but what I do is that throughout the year, I write what we appropriated in the ordinance number, so that way I can track that. And I think it originally started out as 120, and then I had appropriate 140 because cost of stuff went up from
Okay.
original cost on that. So,
Alright.
but good catch. All right, so then going down to the airport, I kind of hit on this early on. a lot of projects that are going on. These are over the past couple of years and the upcoming years, just because how we have to do the cadence with everything. But you can see, you know, if you look over in the grant fund section, I know I only have a couple projects right now, but especially the rehab of runway 725 construction. That's a $5.7 million project, and ODOT and FAA are funding $5.4 million of that. So, you know, that's a big portion of that. We're able to get a lot of work done out there, especially with us only having to match 287,000 as part of that.
So we're gonna spend 10 million a year.
So that, a lot of that is over the past couple of years as well. So that just totals up what those estimated budgets were.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry.
you know, you gotta kind of take that with a grain of salt on that. But if you add up the 6 million and then, Mayor, scroll back to the left a little bit. So they're gonna be spending, just under 7 million, about 6.7 million, this year.
Where are you seeing that? now?
So if you look underneath capital, where it says 783,000, and then go over to the right, that's six. If you put those together, that's what their ask is. But on the PowerPoint that I'll be giving you guys, that will give you a rundown of what their ask is for 24 as well. But yeah, they're with those projects, they're large projects. Those runways are not cheap to pave.
Now,
Is it longer, wider, or just a repaving?
Repaving.
And the engineering for those is just so stringent.
Yeah.
Design.
I mean, yeah,
it's-
it just, they're tearing them up a lot of times just because they come in and literally do so much different testing.
Yep.
one thing I'll
On the
mention.
airport advisory board, that's one of the few things I learned.
One thing I'll mention there is I want to give a shout out to Rob and Jeremy and Amanda and our consultant. The FAA in a lot of spots is actually saying narrow your runways, you know, they don't want to pay us for as much asphalt or whatever. And we pushed back on it and we're able to maintain our existing runways, which is really helpful because it gives us more variety of who can actually land on them. So we didn't want that to be a limiting factor, and we made that case and we're able to keep it.
Can you eliminate 1 versus 2? That was another-
Yeah, they wanted us to get rid of one of our runways, and we said, nope. No, we're not gonna
Who
do
is
that.
asking you to get rid of?
FAA.
FAA.
They want you to prioritize or show the validity and the necessity of it. So we're able to do that.
So then from that, that's pretty much the wrap up. Well, I guess we're starting to get into the enterprise funds. The debt service, like I said, that is what the water is. You can see the large one of 273,000 is going to be rolling off in 2026. So once we get past that point, then, you know, we're looking at roughly the $30,000 range for our debt service after that point. Going down into water treatment, a lot of these projects are the roof replacement. That is going to be the final phase of that. We've talked about in a sewer and water committee meeting as well about that water master plan that will pretty much give us a whole comprehensive guide of where the water starts to pretty much when we get it out to the service on, you know, what our system is looking like, where's our next expansion on that? If someone comes in and they need 1 million gallons, how can we supply that? How is that going to affect our system? Is it actually an SCU unit that we put in? Is an additional water tower? If someone draws from this area, are we going to be draining half of Finley? Stuff like that. But that will give us kind of the game plan going forwards of what our next steps are to maximize that plant, because it is getting its age. It is a great plant for how old it is. I don't want to say just because it's old, it's not functioning. It is a great plant for what it is, but how do we maximize? Between all of us with Jason as well, you know, he could tell you, well, this is what you got to do to make 1 million gallons, but we want to make sure that the money we're spending to get that million gallons, was that actually the route we needed to go to set us up for the future, or were we needing to do X, Y, Z instead to get us to that point?
I would add, you know, it's definitely looking at that future and giving us the roadmap to accommodate, but I think we also want to make sure that it's clear that it also helps us make sure that we are making the investments into our system And we have that kind of outside review of the system to make sure that we're not missing something that, hey, we've done the long-term control plan, that this is the equivalent for the water treatment plan of telling us, here's how the best way to maintain your system, here's where your potential, weaknesses are in it in the, next couple of years. And then how do you position yourself for long-term changes as well?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Where is the generator replacement? Where's that project at?
So we had
I know
that,
it's here,
On
but
it.
so we're waiting on the
we're
generator.
still waiting on the generator.
Yeah, we're still waiting on that, and the ATS for that as well, or the transfer
Transfer
switch
switch.
as well for that. So that's still a lead time out. And I don't know if you kind of recall, but we placed in for the water and wastewater infrastructure grant through DOD. We put in an application for that to cover the rest of the generator renovation or generator, the building renovations and some other site stuff as well on the water treatment plant that has to do with its plant. Haven't heard anything back on that, so hopefully that 625 is actually going to be covered. But we know no matter what, that 625, if it's not covered, we have to do it. But yeah, we're still in a holding period on that to wait. Now, if we hear it's coming sooner than later, then yeah, we'll have to get the installation portion or the labor portion of that out bid.
Okay.
Water distribution, a lot of this is carryover from last year. So you're going to see a lot of projects on there from last year. It's just we haven't appropriated any money yet. So I had it included as part of 24, but it's going to be a big push this year to get a lot of these water lines replaced. Why we had to hold off on some because we wanted to get the transmitters in. With that, our crews are installing all the service lines. So if all the crews are out there working on transmitters, I don't have crews for water service lines. And the thing is, we don't want to drag out water line replacements projects any longer than what they are now. So we decided to hold off on some of them because they weren't, a dire. The ones that were dire, we did get replaced. But a couple of these, like the small water lines we've talked about, Blanchard Street, those are grant funds. Thank you.
It was gonna bother me.
I wish Excel would have spell check. But anyways, but then the East Street, Southwest Street, and Hemp Hill, those are our remaining unknown lines that in October ODOT is going to call, or not ODOT, EPA is going to call them lead services. So before October, we want to get those replaced. So that way we can say 100% we have no lead, we have no unknown services throughout the
So
city.
any unknowns will become lead.
Yeah, in October, any unknowns are going to just turn into lead. So that's our last push with those. So that's what those water lines are on there for, but you will be seeing quite a bit of work going out this year on water line.
One thing I want to mention that is not a specific capital improvement but has a potential big impact on the water fund is with the federal EPA is looking at the PFAS and PFOA regulations, which are like forever chemicals. And long story short, the World Health Organization recommendations, 100 parts per trillion, the United States EPA standard since 2017 has been 60 parts per trillion. The EPA wants it to go down to 4 parts per trillion effective later this year. That would be a huge burden for all water users. And we would have to increase our testing as well as then completely change our treatment process to be able to remove to that 4 parts per trillion quantity. I have filed letters of objection to that EPA rule on behalf of the city, along with a number of other mayors from across the country. So we're keeping a close eye on that, but that rule could be out in the next year or so or in the next couple of weeks. And then we would have a compliance timeline. So just FYI, that's something that we're keeping a close eye
What
on.
is the compliance time?
We,
A couple of years or?
well, the testing would start pretty much immediately, but when you actually have to do it,
Good old unfunded mandates.
yeah. So we've been, we've been objecting to it and saying, because anyways, we could talk a whole other conversation about that, but we'll continue to object to that change.
Jeremy could comment, this one in the Water and Sewer Committee, we'll need to watch the cash flow management on this one pretty closely until we see how the rate increase kicks in and few other items that we're looking through, make sure that you're okay. So
Right.
on this, it would be helpful for me to not only take this when you do your book, you can project out when you see each of these pieces kick in at what time of the year, so that we can take a look at that. If you are mindful of monitoring that for you.
Yeah, I follow along with, you know, all our funds as we're going through, look at our balance before we'll start appropriating.
I'm asking if you give me a rough projection.
Right.
That's next.
Yeah. And kind of one item I want to hit on, and we don't have to go back up, but you've seen there was a project on there called North Main Street. So in the past week, we found out that CDBG is having some money that's been given back to them from past projects. So they are wanting some of these quick hit projects. Sometimes we're told, you know, Wednesday to have an application in by the end of next week. So we have a lot of these project areas that are within low to moderate income that fit all that criteria. So you might be seeing a lot of these come to council where they are quick hit. You know, they want those quick wins that are going to be going through CDBG. So it's you know, it's great on our end because we can use those funds, but you know, on the flip side too, they're moving fast, they're very competitive with that. But I do have an item in there so that way we can kind of keep moving on
It's
that.
that Marco water line, the first one that's West Park.
Yeah.
So there's a phase two. Can we put phase two in that category?
No, they're not, it's not eligible because they're not low to moderate income areas. So
West
they,
Park is not? Okay.
no, we have a map and we follow by that. So
Okay.
Yeah, per the last census, they
Yeah.
no longer qualify.
I would, you know, we could do a spot study, but with how fast these are moving,
No, that's
they call them flex grants.
No, that's fine. Okay.
So just don't have the
So,
time for it.
Utility billing, done. Woo, we can remove it sometime
Yep.
soon.
And then it's just up there because we haven't officially closed it yet, so I keep it up there for more or less my records. Supply reservoir, really nothing on that. We got some work that we need to do with the reservoirs or with the docks, but that's an ongoing project. Going down to sewer maintenance. No debt for that, but I do have the operational costs on that. Some of the big things that are, you know, we have a lot of annual projects that are going on every year, such as our ditch maintenance, our sewer televising, our sewer lining, manhole adjustment, all that kind of stuff. You'll see yearly. So there's a lot of annual stuff going on there. But some of the stuff that you're going to be seeing this year is a lot of repairs that we have found in the past couple of years that we're trying to get ahead of before we get into the long-term control plan. Because once we get into that, we're going to have a lot of work going forwards with that. A lot of these areas, they are unlineable. So we were trying to get them lined. We just couldn't get them lined. So that's why you're going to see a lot of these repairs in the next couple of years for that.
Can you give a quick update?
Yeah, so the Spring Lake, we had the finalized plans. We gave everything over to the EPA on that. They originally gave us $2 million, which would have covered it until we heard back from our pump supplier for our pump station, and it almost tripled in cost of what we were expecting. So that put a big hindering on a lot of things, and we had to change some alignment from AT&T lines and gas lines and stuff like that were not originally marked out, and we found them in another survey. So we had to do some realignment on that, but to that $3 million on there is what we're projecting. I think it was like 2.8, I think our estimate is right now. But we have been in communication with the EPA on that. They have our final cost estimate, so they are working to get those final to meet that delta for us and that. But and they are on the same page that they want this in construction this year still. So they're working on their end to get those funds over to us as soon as possible. As soon as they.
I mean, we're not working until we have it. I guess that's my question.
No, I mean, really, it's not our lines, and I'm not going to accept them until I find them acceptable, which would be full replacement. So until I get those, or if they can give me the reassurance that we have the money, or they have the money for it, I think they have confidence they'll find it. It's just where it's going to come from. So, like I said, there's that water infrastructure grant. None of that has been released yet, but once that's released, I'm sure they might be able to grab something from there or something like that. So, but as of right now, we're kind of in a holding until they get back from us on that, but we've been working with, yeah. It's one of those I'll be happy with, so.
The West Park Sewer Project, can we go up to that one?
Yeah,
That one, I think, is still in committee, Mr. Chairman. I don't know, we really made a recommendation on it. I think it needs more discussion if we're gonna talk about an alternative.
no, sorry, so now I called it West Park,
It's like 6:25.
West Park Sand, yeah, there it is. So yeah, I just have the money, that's what our cost estimates are coming up right now. You know, as part of this, I won't be appropriating any funds. I can keep it on the capital, I can pull it off the capital because it's in discussion. That's up to you guys on that, but I do have the funds set aside, so it's built in.
Okay, that's fine.
None of it will be appropriated until it goes through that full process.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so that's a great reminder, for those watching at home is, this is the plan. But then we still take each thing to you guys for approval, so
Yeah,
it helps us know where to work on and what to track and what to move forward, but then ultimately you guys still have approval of things.
Okay.
But that's an EPA issue, that's sanitary, I mean,
No, he's talking about,
The
West
septic.
Park,
yeah,
West Park Sanitary.
yeah, isn't that the one that they're requesting, the one that they came and
Right,
requested?
yeah, right. So
I
it
mean,
just needs more discussion. It's 635 for 6 houses.
but, I mean, I agree there's discussion about it, but when you have an issue, the reason we originally started the first project is because there were leach beds and bad septics, and we know those septics are bad, so I thought we had an obligation.
There's alternative technology I want to discuss further.
We don't, because it's within ours, like as the city, we don't have to run it because of that. Now, if the health department came to us, because they're the ones jurisdiction over that, if they came to us and said, we need this extended because of that,
They never said they were failing. Doesn't matter, I'll be.
I can't speak for, I don't want to speak for if they are not, but that's, we don't as a city say, that's failing, I have to run it there. I'm never going to tell someone no on a sanitary, if I can run it to them, talking with you guys on that, but I don't think it's, we're the ones that are forcing it out to that. The health department comes to us and say, hey, we need this out here because we have that. Of course, I don't want to have an environmental problem or something like that.
And it's not that we don't want to do this project, there's might be another way to skin a cat on this one.
Right.
So
And
we
it's,
want to discuss all different ways.
I'm glad
to
to
get
hear
this
this
done.
other idea.
Jeremy?
Yeah.
Just because I was looking at numbers while you guys were
Yep.
discussing things that are over my head. On the Washington Avenue Storm Sewer, the
Yep.
phase 2, is that 950 supposed to go or across the only see 75 out there? So the numbers at the bottom.
so the 950 is what the budget for the whole project is. That 75 is
Just what's
what
left.
I'm going to be appropriating this year for survey and design type stuff.
So then the other amounts are in
They'll
future
be the
years.
next couple years.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's kind of confusing because I
Yeah,
have
the
it over
numbers
there,
just didn't
but
line up.
I never wanted to put, 75,000, then in 25, you guys look at me like, where did this 950 come from?
If you
So,
look at the project description sheets, that's where we have the summary and the breakout.
yeah, I break them down. I break them out.
Just the only one that didn't work over.
Yep, nope,
Good
nope, you're
question.
good.
Oh, boy,
No, you're
I
good.
scrolled, sorry.
And just not to interrupt, it's
Yep.
5:15. I'm gonna have to go here, just to set up it. It's not Doddle, if you could adjourn around 5:45.
John, your comments are down.
If you could adjourn at about 5:45, so that way we can start the meeting at 6 o'clock, I'd appreciate it, all right?
Yes, sir.
I think really the next section, if you want to go to recreational development, scroll down because those are all carryover projects.
Yes, sir.
Keep going. Yeah. Excuse me. So really the big ticket item for recreational develop, besides the base benching and the downtown park, but our interstate and FHS trail, that will be going out to bid this year. 90% of that is covered through ODOT TAP funds. But that will be going out, so that's what that $1.2 million of that. But every year we're doing TAP projects to expand our multi-use paths projects with out there. And then we have Greenway Trail, as you can see, if you scroll to the left a little bit, I think you can't see the capital. There we go. There is some money that we already appropriated as part of that this year already. But that will be going construction here in the next year to two on that. and then going down into the roadway and infrastructure. If you kind of want to hit on the big ones on that, you'll see the County Road 212 and 236 project is still up there. With that, our kind of plan is to go through the annexation process in 24 to get that approved and be in construction in 25. I just don't want to be in construction in 24 with that project. With the 230 project, the 99 and 75 version, that's going to be a messy corridor. So I think once that kind of calms down in 25, we'll be in construction with that. The funds that I have right there, the 925, what that is covering is widening the drop arms for the railroad in that section. Last year, we had a grant opportunity for that. I'm still going to keep trying to find a grant opportunity to get those expanded, but I did want to at least set the money aside so I knew I could get that completed. The 230 project, we still have the 629 in ODOT funds to appropriate. We are actually going to be out to bid here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, hopefully in the early part of April on that. So we are ahead of schedule. Moving on that, so we'll probably be coming back to appropriation to ask for the final approval of that. But construction plans are moving along very well. We have moved up a lot on that. One of the big changes on that, and that's what that $900,000 is up at the reimbursement. After working with Sheets on a couple of different items with their fire suppression system, they needed a certain PSI, and we could not fit that. So they actually had to put a pump house where when you put in a pump house, you can't have 2 feeds because then you got to feed them both to the pump house anyway. So they only have 1 feed. Originally, when we were working with them, they were hoping to have those 2 feeds off. So we have decided to not extend that water line up to 30 at this time, just because we're going to be running a long lead line and it's going to be a dead end. So we are building in a corridor within our plans. So if it is ever needed in the future, say the property to the east is being expanded, then at that time, we have an area set aside for that construction. We are going to have, at least extend the water line out so it's out of the roadway, all that kind of fun stuff. But I just didn't want to put in a $1 million line that's going to be a dead end line. So we worked with Sheets, like I said, Sheets back and forth on that, but really they got to have the fire suppression that they needed.
So what happens to the funding that we got?
The water line was completely ours.
Oh, it was
completely water funds.
So in essence, said a short way, we're not gonna have to spend $900,000.
Yeah. So we decided not to do that. And that once we kind of get through and we're kind of construction and make sure everything's good, then we'll appropriate those funds back to the water fund.
One thing on that as well, we have been talking a little bit, and then through discussions with Andrew, he said it's something that would try to expedite conversations on. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll be bringing up to some committee of this group looking at a potential TIF district that would include the Sheets project to potentially recoup some of the expenses and then help with other infrastructure investments in that area. So I think that's worth a conversation, and we'll bring that up to the group in the next couple of weeks. So that's preliminary, but just a heads up.
And then real quick, last 2 items, resurfacing, you can see that went up quite a bit from last year. Why that went up, because of how, the 2024 annual street resurfacing. Yep, that one right there. Last year, I think it was at 1.4. We're at $2 million this year. So we are able to, with how we are structuring our work and stuff, that the street department's resurfacing project and our street resurfacing project, we can all lump into one project now instead of having separate. So why that is we're combining almost 3 projects together. So that's why it's a larger number if you look compared to last year. Like I said, last year's right above it. So that's why that number is bigger. Just because how we can use that. And then that last one, 224 reconfiguration, we are working with ODOT. There is a safety grant opportunity or fund where we request them to do a traffic study, safety study down through a certain area. This area was 224 from Center Street all the way out to 237 for them to do a traffic study down through there to see how we can make that corridor a little bit safer. Because we are what was it?
300
Three
accidents,
hundred accidents on that area within the past.
1 year.
Oh yeah, it was averaging 300 a year. That's what it was. It was averaging 300 accidents a year on that. So they'll be evaluating everything down through there and see. They feel it's a good it is a good project for safety funds. If it's safety funds, a lot of that is covered 90 to 100% all through safety funds. So fingers crossed on that.
I like the orange barrels in front of, Raising Cane's.
Did Raising Cane's help that situation?
So far, no issues.
They've been,
Oh,
Yeah.
it's all covered in orange
Really,
barrels.
all
After the
the,
first 2 weeks, then we'll find out.
we always see what happens when those things go away.
a lot of the issues on Tiffin Avenue are really related to Jim Niemeyer's drag racing. So, Jim, if you can get that under control, we really appreciate
Just
it.
in the summer.
Only in the summer.
Hey, Jeremy,
Yeah.
with what you proposed, you said about 50% is infrastructure, 84 projects, and then you talked about doing the border with the water line. In the past, a lot of times we've had maps as to where we're targeting projects and whatnot. Can you guys put together some type of map that shows not only maybe where you're targeting some of these major projects, but more particularly where these projects lead to potential development because of improved infrastructure and targeted development, whether it's from something we're targeting or something that the Alliance is interested in, so that we have a little better way to evaluate some things long-term in our longer-term thinking from the money side.
I mean, really it's something that can be done, but really our like water line replacements and all that are all residential areas. Our street resurfacing are, I don't go through, and no offense to you guys, but I don't look at the wards and say, I'm gonna do one in each ward. I go where the streets are bad. So, we have to go where it is because if we don't fix something, that's the way it is. When we come up with opportunities where there is an economic development, say project, in case the 230 project, that's where we're coming to you guys to talk about those and discuss them. So, I can supply you with a map of where we're going and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to be putting a capital plan out of where our street resurfacing is and all that kind of stuff. But, I think saying, well, this is what I identify as an economic development, I think that would be kind of on our reach of what the projects are speaking for.
I'm more interested is where your improvements actually provide the opportunity. And you said
I think
something,
it'll be part of the TIF
well, you said
discussion.
something earlier too, that is really key, and a lot of people here don't know. When we did that study in 0506 up in the northeast quarter, we know there's no pressure up there, which is why you want industrial development up there, because they can't put pumps in, so they got proper fire suppression. You don't want residential development up there. So as we did the land use plan and start to marry that with some of your capital improvements, they need to see that come together in a format that we can all understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I
At a
know,
lower level.
I see what you're saying on that. I think a lot of that will come from those master plan
Yeah.
discussions. But right now, I know looking at, water lines, sanitaries, all that is repairs.
It's strictly
It's
repairs.
strictly repairs where we need to get something repaired at that time. Same way with street resurfacing. It's, it might be on line item or something like that, but it's maintenance type stuff.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think the TIF district discussion will really be where we'll be able to talk about economic development. I think we look at opportunities. It's primarily 212, 236, 99. That's the real areas for investment. We will look, I think, with the GIS. I know a couple years ago we did the map on where all the capital projects were. So we should be able to have that mapped out. I know that's been a goal for people to be able to get on there and look at what projects to expect. So we'll continue to push on that.
Very good. Any other questions for Jeremy?
Jeremy, on that 40,000 for the sidewalk, did we ever make up criteria for that ARPA dollar?
We have the area, I was actually going to get with Palmer. I was going to discuss that, but he's not here tonight. But yeah, we have some areas that we identified and we just need to sit down, but with streets and sidewalks.
There was an email that we just got sent from us from Denise about,
Your school.
yeah, so I just
Yeah.
wondered if that would apply, because my first answer is,
Yeah.
well, property owners need to fix their sidewalks.
A lot of our discussion of where internally what we're looking at is areas that there are not sidewalks that it would be conducive for people to pass. Say a subdivision is not connected to each other. They're making a dangerous crossing across the major highway because there's a sidewalk on that side, but on not this side. Another one, areas we're looking at is around schools, around hospitals, around those high traffic areas. Make sure those are safe, because when we do like grant opportunities for safe routes to school and all that kind of stuff, that's what they're going to be looking at is, well, how did you expand your system? Did you, hit your priority areas first before you started going off and just, on a street, do a sidewalk because you wanted sidewalk there? No, we have a plan on, okay, a mile outside of this school, what's our conditions look like? What's our curb ramps look like? And a lot of that with ADA transition plan as well. A lot of these are going to play together on all that kind of stuff.
I think we touched on it, but went over it. Can you touch, because we're doing Melrose, right? We submitted Melrose. or
Yeah. It was on there. So Melrose, we're doing a multi-use path on the north side. So it will go from, what we proposed was from Crystal Avenue to Bright Road. And then on Bright Road, we were going down from Melrose to Fostoria Avenue. So that will kind of help that whole corridor within that area. A site that I've been using for a lot of this stuff is Strava. I don't know if anyone's heard, but it's a Strava. Thank you. I knew Graham was but it shows you heat maps of where a lot of people are using these, and that was a white hot traffic area. So we're submitting that information to ODOT as well as part of a transportation alternative plan. So hopefully here in the next month, I should hear if we have grant funding for that.
Any other questions? Jeremy, we're at 20, as I mentioned before, 2024-33, which is your first capital improvement allocation, second reading tonight. Any reason that we need to look at pushing that through?
No, I don't. I think we should be all right for the third reading. You're probably going to see something at the next meeting for a second round.
Okay.
But that's why I got it last.
Off now, though.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was.
We're
That's
not
why I
putting any
pushed it.
projects up. We're not.
No. We timed it up so that way the third reading we were still good.
Anything else? Very good. It is 5:28.